Hello there and welcome to MTG Degree. Now the first thing that I want to let you know about the pre-release here is that there are going to be seeded packs, which means that there'll be one pack that will be focused towards a guild. So maybe you get an Orzhov pack and it'll have all black, white, or black-white cards in there, along with a guild gate and a guild locket, I believe. Now, this means that there will be competition for these packs. So if by the end of this video, or if you already know what guild you're interested in playing, call your LGS, right, your local game store, and say, hey, do I need to sign up? I wanted to sign up to play Simic, for example. And so go ahead and do that. Make sure that when you go, you can actually play the guild that you want. So just letting you know right away. So the first guild I'd like to talk about is Rakdos. Now, Rakdos has the Spectacle mechanic, and this mechanic is if they've taken damage this turn, if they've lost life in any way, then you get some cheaper casting cost, or you get some different effects when cards come into play. And so let's talk about how to set up Spectacle. Spear Spewer, 10th Street Dodger, and Thirsting Shade are my three favorite Spectacle enablers. Now, Spear Spewer, I think, is the best one in basically the whole set. You put it down turn one, and every single turn after that, you've got your Spectacle, and it costs no mana to achieve that. So a really excellent card. Orzhov Enforcer and Cult Guildmage are our next two cards. Now, the Enforcer is great because people just don't want to block it because it's got that death touch, but then that allows you to get your Spectacle going on. And then if you block with it, and it dies, and you've got a 1/1 to get your Spectacle going on with the flying there. So both of them are very good in their own way. The Guildmage, the downside, of course, is that you actually have to put mana to get that Spectacle going. Ill-Gotten Inheritance is the last card that I want to mention for two reasons. One is that it's really good at getting Spectacle going. Now, somebody said this in the comments of my last video, and You're looking too far into the future, man. I was saving that for this advanced video, okay? But nice job. So this is good at getting you that free Spectacle every single turn. And beyond that, this is also very good in aggro decks because sometimes you run out of steam, and this can really put you past the finish line. Overall, my honest opinion is that I'm not that excited for Rakdos for pre-release. It's got an aggressive mechanic, but you have to do some setup costs to get it to work, and that's something that I don't really like in pre-release. Now, in draft, when you've got like a fine-tune deck that's been picked through a huge amount, right? Draft allows a lot more synergy, so this could be very well a good guild in draft, but I don't think that Rakdos is going to be that good in sealed. So if you don't know what you want to do, you could maybe just cross this off your list. Gruul is next, and let's talk about their ability, Riot. Now, Riot is interesting because when you're playing against Riot, what you need to think is a lot more creatures have haste than usual. So if you're in control of the board and they don't have anything out, you still have to imagine, oh, I could be hit for 3 damage. I could be hit for 4 damage. So you can't just start attacking right away. That kind of incentivizes people playing against Gruul to play a little bit more safe, hold things back even more than usual. Now, another thing to consider about Riot is there will be some rare times where you have 2 instances of Riot. So you could have Rhythm of the Wild or Domri Raid. Both of these give creatures Riot. So if you're playing a creature that already has Riot, then you've got 2 Riots. So what does that mean? Well, it means that you can actually do it twice. So you could put 2 1/1 counters on it, you could give it a 1/1 counter in haste, or you could give it haste twice for some reason. You want your creature to be small. That will be extremely edge case when you want that to happen. But just be aware that when you have the Rhythm of the Wild is where it's mostly going to happen, that you have 2 Riots when you play a Riot creature, which is pretty darn sweet. So what are my thoughts in general on Gruul? I would say that if you don't really know Magic that well, let's say you're new, this is your first pre-release, something like that, Gruul is a pretty safe pick. It's not like Spectacle. There's no crazy setup whatever cost that you have to figure out and kind of finagle your way into having an aggressive deck. You just play creatures and you smash face, which is exactly what Gruul should be doing. So I think this is a pretty safe and reasonable pick, and if you like smashing things, go Hulk smash. Next up, we've got Simic, which is very interesting. So their ability is Adapt. Now, the nice thing about Adapt is that it acts as an onboard combat trick. So when your opponents are looking at it, if you've got a 3-3 attacking their 3-3, 4-4 on their 4-4, if they block, you can activate, and that makes them want to not block. And so what ends up happening is your 4-4 attacks past their 4-4, which normally it wouldn't be able to if it didn't have the ability, right? So they're just taking 4 damage, and then you don't even use the adaptability. All you do is you just play another creature, so they have even more pressure against them. So that's a great thing. You can just threaten to use the ability and then not use it and just play creatures instead, which is awesome. Now, another interesting thing about Adapt is that it works no matter where the +1/+1 counters are coming from. So with Sharkdo Crab here, let's say you use Stony Strength or Biogenic Upgrade on it. Well, it's going to get that freezing ability even though you didn't actually use the Adapt. So that allows for a lot of cases where you're getting sneaky ability uses, or if you have Biogenic Upgrade and you're using it on 3 things like Sharkdo Crab that give you cool effects when you put +1/+1 counters on it, you're getting a huge deal on the cost of those abilities. Lastly, I'd like to talk about specifically Galloping Lizrog. Now, this thing is an all-star in Simic, and the reason why is because it can pull counters off of creatures. And once the counters are off of the creatures, then you can use Adapt again and get the abilities, which normally only work for the first counter that goes on, but since you pull the counter off, boom, no problem. My thoughts on Simic in general is that it's good, and it'll be best played by people who have actually quite a bit of experience. And the reason why is because there's a lot of decisions in Simic. So, am I going to use this activated ability? Am I going to cast another card? When exactly, when I'm playing Simic, am I on the attack? You want to get in, you want to turn on them as fast as possible, or decide that suddenly you're on the defense as fast as possible because you've got some sweet abilities that will bring you through the long game. So making these kinds of decisions really optimally is going to be really powerful in Simic. However, I think that it is a really cool guild with a lot of inherent power as well, and just recognizing the kind of like built-in combat tricks built into it is also probably good enough. So I think that really good players will get the most out of Simic. But if you want to play Simic just because it has cards called Galloping Lizrog and Sharkdo Crab, that is totally legit, and you'll probably do well anyway. Next up is Orzhov with the ability Afterlife. Now it's real simple. It's Afterlife plus a number. Whatever that number is, then you get 1 flying 1/1 spirit creature token when it dies. So this creature, for example, has Afterlife 2, so you get 2 1/1 flying creature tokens. This is actually an example of one of the better cards. Now, what I would say about Orzhov is there's nothing too complicated going on here. It's pretty much the exact opposite of Simic. Very simple, not much going on. Your creatures die, you get 1/1s, you try to attack them in the air, you remove their creatures. It's a very simple way to play Magic. The downside is it's very simple. You don't get a lot of choices while you're playing, but at the same time, it's kind of a guild that plays slowly. So slow games tend to favor players who have been playing for longer because slow games have more decision points in them. So then the more decisions you make correctly, then the more likely you are to win. So this kind of makes you want to play a slow game, but it doesn't really give you a lot of like interesting tools with which to win that slow game. So I would say I'm actually not that huge of a fan of Orzhov for pre-release. Next up is Azorius, and its ability word is Addendum. Now, Addendum doesn't actually mean anything. It's just kind of a reminder of how it works. So basically, if you take things that you could cast at any time, and you cast them during your main phase instead, then you get an extra bonus. Now, Azorius is going to play slow just like Orzhov plays slow, but because of the Addendum mechanic where you're actually making decisions constantly, then it's actually making that long game something that you're more likely to win because you have more decisions that you can make correctly in the meantime. Now, that being said, pretty much the way that this guild tends to win, in my opinion, is in the air. It's got a lot of good flyers. It's got sweet removal spells like Sky Tether. So it's kind of like Orzhov, in that it wants to play long, but it's got more decisions that can be made, and it's also got counter spells which allow you to stop big bombs from coming down and killing you. So I am a little bit more up on Azorius for pre-release. Now, we've talked about all the guilds, so as far as the other 2-color guilds go, like black-green, stuff like that, Golgari, I would say don't do that. That's a good way to lose. We have lots of gold cards that are incentivizing strongly these particular guilds, and their abilities work well together. So I would not play the other 5 2-color combinations. Now you can play more than 2 colors, so let's talk about that. So the first 3-color combination that just shines, in my opinion, is actually Orzhov and Azorius together. And so you're playing white, blue, black. And that's because both of these guilds are trying to do the same thing, which is play really slow. But by increasing your number of colors by 1, which is a little bit easier when you're playing slow, then you open yourself up to have way more tools in your pool. You know, you get to look at all the black cards when you're signed up for Azorius. So I really like the idea of playing Esper, and they just synergize very well together, especially because a lot of the flying lords, will work on tokens from the spirits in your Orzhov set, and, some of those lords are blue, for example. So having that synergy of those two is really awesome. Next up, I really like Temur. Now, Temur is Gruul and Simic working together, and the reason for this is because they're both aggressively slanted with a lot of options going on when you play their creatures. So they work well together in putting the opponent off kilter, and they have a lot of creatures that work together in very interesting ways, like Sharkdo Crab and Bullrack Clan Crusher. So, these two work surprisingly synergistically, especially because Riot puts +1/+1 counters, and then those can be moved around, for example, or get bonuses. And so these two clans are basically designed to work together. Now, I wanted to point a finger at Rakdos. It's particularly bad at these multicolor combinations because it wants to get Spectacle going early so that it can get creatures out cheap. If you're stumbling on mana because you've got more than 2 colors of mana in your deck, then that can make that early game tough, and you're not really designed to win out those late games without Spectacle. Now, of course, I'm only talking about averages here, so I think that Azorius and Orzhov are going to work together well on average in a lot of pools, and so will Simic and Gruul. And maybe you'll have the pool where Rakdos was great with third color. But we're just talking in general, thinking about how these abilities all work together. Now, let's say you just want to play a ton of colors, 4, even 5 colors. How do you accomplish that? Well, first of all, you play all of your gates, right? All the gates that you got, you just play them. You should have 6 because there's 1 in each pack. Then you play maybe a Locket or 2, and then you play Open the Gates, Ceruli Caretaker, and Silhana Wayfinder. These will really help you get your mana running. And then what are your payoffs, right? Well, first of all, your payoffs are just getting to play all of the awesome rares and mythics that you get, all the big guys, all your Rakdos, Showstoppers, whatever, right? But then you've also got Gatebreaker Ram, Gates Ablaze, and Gate Colossus, okay? Those are designed for this kind of deck, and they're very, very good in it. Lastly, I want to talk to you about the most busted rares and mythics, okay? I want it so that when you see these cards, you're like, wow, I should play this almost certainly, right? So what are those cards? So the first 3 are Biogenic Ooze, Skardan Hellkite, and Ethereal Absolution. Now the Ooze wins the whole game on its own, okay? This effect is outrageous. So you definitely want to play your Biogenic Oozes. Skargan Hellkite is good when you play it with Riot and you get the +1/+1 counter because it becomes repeat removal, which is very, very strong in any limited game. Ethereal Absolution is an extremely unfun effect for your opponent, like ridiculously unfun, and it makes its own tokens, which is just very, very strong. Biomancer's Familiar, Teysa Karlov, and Captive Audience are our next ones. Now, Biomancer's Familiar, of course, you need the whole deck around it, but what this does for Simic is just overpower all of your creatures. Really, really strong effect, but you have to use the whole deck in order to make it so ridiculously powerful. Teysa Karlov, the Orzhov version of Biomancer's Familiar, you get twice as many spirits, and all of those spirits have lifelink. That is so ridiculous. And so if you see her and you can make some spirits, man, she should be in the deck. Captive Audience is ironically bad in Rakdos because it costs so much mana. So you're probably going to cast it when you're in some other guild, and then you splash a little red for it, or you're splashing black for it. But its effect is very, very strong, all three modes. And even though your opponent gets to make the choices, which typically is not that great, all of these choices are just so bad. Lastly, I want to talk about Domri, Dovin, and Kaya, not as the busted rare mythic segment, but just talking about Planeswalkers in general. Now, when you open Planeswalkers generally, you just are really, really incentivized to play them. That's actually not true in this set. Domri, Chaosbringer, he's really good. You should be making some effort to play him if at all possible. But the other two are actually not that incredible. They're kind of just average rare power, and so just because they're Planeswalkers, don't feel like you have to play these last two, and that should help you with your deck building. Now, I hope you guys have fun in your pre-release. I know that we're talking a lot about, how to win, how to do the best strategy, but mostly just focus on having fun. Enjoy yourselves out there. If you enjoyed this video, think you got something out of it, give it a like. If you want to see more, of course, that subscribe button is there for you. And as always, I'll see you next video.